Welcome everyone to Write Hive 2025. I'm Patry Jones, and today I am super excited to sit down with one of this year's stupendous guest of honor, Ayana Gray. Ayana, it's such a pleasure to have you here. If you guys do not know who Ayana Gray is, I don't know what rock you've been sleeping under because she is a New York Times best-selling author. Her works have been translated into a dozen languages across 5 continents, and they have received critical acclaim at the state and national level. Ayana has also served as a guest lecturer for writing workshops across the United States. And originally from Atlanta, Georgia, she is currently living in Arkansas, where she's taking time out of her busy schedule to chat with us today. So welcome so much, Ayana. It's such a pleasure to finally meet you, see you, and chat with you. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much to Write Hive for continuing to create programming that's accessible to people no matter where they are.
Definitely. Write Hive is definitely where I found my home when I started writing and came in. And it was just like, I love the free resources that we offer. And as soon as I had a chance, I jumped in and I've been moderating ever since. So but before we jump into the question, so I definitely, as I was talking to Ayana earlier, I always try to read all of the books of our authors, especially our guest of honors, to kind of get a feel for what you like to write and what genres you work in. So I've gotten through the first 2 books of the Beast of Prey trilogy, and I'm really excited to finish it and looking forward to I, Medusa's release later this year. So with that, can you start by just telling us about your own writing journey and what inspired you to start writing?
Sure. So I feel like I have a very unextraordinary start to my story, and then it gets becomes extraordinary. Um, I, like a lot of people, just I loved storytelling. I can't even tell you when I first started to tell stories, because whether it was stories told from family members through oral tradition, whether it was me when I didn't know how to write, I would draw like illustrations and staple them together to make books. When I was really small, I used the family Gateway desktop that tells you how old I am, to like write on the very old Microsoft Word software. Like I have been writing my whole life. I thought authors were these magical beings. I had no idea how to become one, but I have always loved storytelling. And so I was reading and writing, those kind of go hand in hand for me. I did that my entire life from, adolescence through being a teenager. I was very fortunate to be a teenager during the YA boom, which was really
Mm,
special because it was like suddenly there were all these books and I felt like they were all for me and
yes.
my age, which was really cool. Um, and again, I think I always wanted to be an author, but it wasn't like there was an author school to go to. It wasn't like if you want to be a lawyer, there's law school. You want to be a doctor, there's medical school. I just thought there was no way to do it. I was like, I don't know how. So people ask, like, did I go to college for creative writing? I did not. I went to become a lawyer because I liked to read and write, and people said, if you're good at that, you should be a lawyer. Um, got halfway through undergrad and realized I did not want to be a lawyer for multiple reasons, but I stuck out and got the degree, um, graduated, and for the first time in my life, I think a lot of people go through this, you suddenly don't know what to do. Like when you're a kid, it's like, okay, go to the next grade, go to the next grade, and then you think college. But I didn't have a plan when I graduated and I felt like I'd failed. And so I retreated into writing as a means of coping. Um, and I was writing the story. I had this big vision in my head. I couldn't get it to work on paper, but I couldn't let it go either. And so, like I would shelve it and pick it back up again and shelve it, pick it up again. And that was I ended up finishing that book. And that was Beasts of Prey. So the first book I ever finished, not started, but the first book I
Yeah.
actually finished ended up being the first book that I ended up going on to publish, which was really, really neat. And
Yes.
then the rest is history. I now four, oh no, I'm now 5 books and I've now written 5, published 3. My fourth one will publish this fall. And then I've finished drafting the first draft of my 5th book just a few weeks ago.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an amazing journey when you think about it. And sometimes when we like to read and write as kids, and then that sticks with us, even when we go into all these different degree like disciplines. I'm a speech person. I went to school. I wanted to be an English teacher, but I hated English. And I started the English degree. I was just like, I don't want to read all these stuffy British authors, and I don't want to read American history and classical American lit. It just was
Yep.
not my thing. I fell into the speech team, and I started competing, seeing these, and realizing I really kind of love public speaking, which is what I do now. So I teach public speaking at the colleges. But we never really know. It took like 20 years because we went, my husband and I had our own consulting firm for years. But writing is always kind of stuck in the back of your mind. I was a drama kid, so we have
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
love of storytelling as we're younger. And I think when you're at that pit or you kind of fit this, like hit this lull or wall in your life, books are always there for us. And so I think it's amazing that you kind of stuck with it. I think new writers, we always underestimate how long it takes us to write and finish manuscripts. So that's amazing. But the fact that it was your first book that you actually finished, and then that's what you queried with. And so clearly, kind of going into the career part, how did you end up finding your agent for The Beast of Prey? And I'm sure every other books that you've had now.
Yeah, yeah. I've been very lucky to have the same agent through my whole career now. His name is Pete Knapp. He's
Mhm.
at Park Fine and Brower Literary Management. So if you are a writer, I highly recommend them, and I recommend the agent. Of course, I'm very biased. I think he's wonderful. Um, so a really big thing that helped me was community. When people ask for advice, I always say find a community. I know you talked about finding a community with
Yes.
Write Hive because having people who are going through what you're going through, who may even be a few steps ahead of you, can be so helpful. And I moved to Gainesville, Florida, for my first my first no, my second adult job, where I was going to an office. And I had no community there in person. I had no friends, no family. And so I really leaned on the online writing community that was on Twitter at that time.
Mhm.
And I was able to find friends. And one day I was on there and I saw all these pitches for these really cool books like down my timeline. And I was like, what is this? And it turned out to be DV Pit. DV Pit was a pitching event. I say was, I think it's being revived.
Yes.
That
Yes.
time, it was a pitching event, not a competition, where you
Mhm.
could pitch your manuscript if it was complete using the hashtag DV Pit and other hashtags to say whether it was young adult, adult, whatever.
Mhm.
And agents would go through, and if they liked your tweet, that meant they wanted you to send the manuscript to them. And I was like, this is so cool. I don't have anything to submit, but this is so cool. I actually reached out to Beth Phelan. She's an agent
Mhm.
and the
Yes.
creator. And I asked her, hey, are you going to do this again? And she said, yes, April of next year. And that was
Mhm.
really important because it was the first time in my life that I actually had a deadline for my writing. Like I was always on again, off again, shelving it, coming back to it with no
Mhm.
real pressure to finish. But I was like, okay, if I can finish this manuscript by April of next year, I can pitch it in this event. And so me and a friend that I met through the writing community, we worked together. We workshopped our pitches. We, made the goal we're both going to finish our manuscripts by April. I pitched it in April. I was super nervous. Like I was so nervous I took off a day of work. I was just so anxious, putting yourself out there. Twitter's a huge space. You don't know what's going to happen.
Mhm.
I was like, just please, two or three agents. If I get two or three, I will have won the day. And I had a friend that was like, "Hey, you should check your Twitter." And I got really lucky. I ended up getting like 40 agents that liked it and were interested, which was really cool. And
Mhm.
Pete was actually one of them. So I
Mhm.
actually found my agent through Twitter technically, and
Yep.
I tell that story. I laugh at it now, but I tell that story to tell people you've got to put yourself out there, shoot your shot.
Yes.
It may not always work, but as the saying goes, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And that one tweet has literally changed my entire life trajectory. So I always, yeah, shoot your shot.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. When you said Pete, I was like, I know Pete does DV Pit. And so
Yeah, he's
I
really intelligent.
yeah, and so the great advocate for the BIPOC community and diverse stories. And so that was definitely yeah, we had when we did I moderated for DB Pit as well. So when we had the last pitch contest in Discord and everybody I thought it worked fine, but I'm not huge on Discord. I only use Discord primarily for Right Hive. And so it is a difficult forum and format to get used to. But pitch contest in a nutshell definitely do work. So yes, DV Pit is coming back this year. They're going to be on Blue Sky in October.
Oh, yeah,
So
great.
that's definitely going to be awesome to see how that works and stuff. But
Yeah.
definitely agree with you in shooting your shot and then just putting the pitch out there. It's like the worst that can happen is nothing. And that's what it's going to happen if it just sat in your head anyways. So put it out there. But that sense of vulnerability is definitely terrifying
Hard. A
for
lot of
all
writers are,
new
I
authors.
think a lot of us are introverts, or,
Yes.
an introvert doesn't mean you don't know how to talk to people or you don't know how to, it takes a lot of energy out of you. You got to like hype yourself up. So I get it. But I mean, not just DV Pit. Like if you go to a festival, like I know my agent goes to like Y'all Fest every year. So if you see an agent at a festival and that they're not busy, shoot your shot. Like, the worst that can happen is they say, "Oh no," or that doesn't sound like the right project for me. But the best thing is they might say, "Hey, let me see your stuff." Oh,
But definitely shooting your shot is very, very important. And so anybody who's out there, we're always, always looking for stories, right? And that's definitely one of the fun parts of being an author, having that sense of creativity and freedom to just write down whatever you want and create whatever worlds that you have out there. So kind of leaning into the next question, what do you think would be the best part of your writing career? And like, what do you enjoy writing the most?
ooh. Um, well, okay. So something that I do, and I'm going to answer the question, but I have to like parse it a little bit because something I wish I'd known is that for me, I have two careers under one hat. I
Mm-hmm.
have the part of my career that's being a writer, and I have part of the career that's being an author. And those actually are separate for me. And the pros and cons are different for each part of it, but it's still one job. So
Right.
as a writer, my job is to tell good stories, and it's about the craft. It's about, good character arcs and prose. And so the part that I love is the aha moment, or sometimes I have aha moments where I'm struggling, I can't get it to work, and then suddenly it's like a moment and I'm like, yes, this like it's like it sings when you're tuning a guitar and finally it sounds right. Um, I really love those moments and they're rare and they're fleeting. But when they come, it feels so good and you're like, this is what I was put on this planet to do. So I love those moments. I love the people I've gotten to meet from all over the world who I never would have gotten to meet, but we all share this love of writing. And this might sound a bit basic, but the fact that I get to do what I love, what I would and have been doing for free, I get to do that as my job. I don't take
Right.
that for granted. And I love that that's my job. On the author side, it's very different because my job as an author is not really about the craft. It's about really selling my books and being in front of readers and the public kind of part of it. And I love meeting readers. That's like one of the best parts of that part of the job. I love meeting readers. I love that I can create something and connect with another human being who I would not have connected with in any other way. Um, I think the hard part of being an author is in this climate in like the 2020s, there's so much pressure. There's like a social media component to it, and and it didn't used to exist for authors, I think, in the past as much, like being so face forward as an introvert. That is tough. But the payoff is good because, like I said, I met a woman who she's told me about how her grandchild, they were in a house fire and they lost everything, including a book, a copy of Beasts of Prey that I'd signed. And she was like, the only thing that she cared about was that she lost your book.
Oh,
And I was like very emotional about it because to know that your work meant that much to someone who has just lost everything, it really humbles you. So I love getting to interact and meet readers and hear those stories too.
yeah. Well, that's definitely the motivation for writing. If we think of us ourselves, a lot of writers loved reading as kids. And so we definitely found ourselves in those books. And then nowadays we have more diversity and representation where we can see ourselves in this story. And it's so important for most of us as writers and as authors to be out there. And I love the way that you kind of create this bifurcation of you're a writer and you're an author because when we're sitting at the desk and we're sitting at our computers, writing is a totally different set of mind. It's a different mindset. And being as an author, I don't think a lot of new creatives understand that two-sidedness of it, and we
Mhm.
often forget the business components of it. So I think like throughout, it's great that that's a message that you're putting out there and how you have to be able to wear these multiple hats when
Yeah.
you dive into the career because marketing your book is totally different than writing it. And
Yeah.
if
It,
it
it
sold itself, that'd be good, but it doesn't.
It doesn't. And I think the reason I try to say it a lot is because I was putting so much pressure on myself as a debut. Like I'd have a morning where, oh, look, I answered 10 emails from my agent and my publisher and I got so much done, but I didn't write. And I'd be like
Right.
failing. Or, oh, I wrote 1,000 words today, but I have all these emails I didn't answer. And I'm like, I just
Mhm.
feel like I'm failing. And I had to be like, no, some days you have to be an author. Some days you have to be a writer. You cannot be everything all the time at once. Like you
Yeah.
have to give yourself that grace and
Yeah.
understand you're doing two jobs under one hat. So
Yeah.
I think I try to say that often so that new authors, people coming into it, don't beat themselves up as much as I beat myself up.
Definitely. Definitely. And so when you think of that, it's kind of sounds like that's the business side can be one of the definitely challenging aspects of it. What about on the writing side? What do you find, or which part of the writing process do you think is the most challenging? You love the aha moments,
Yeah.
but what just like drives you crazy and you wish just didn't have to
Yeah,
exist?
I'm so for me, drafting is really, really hard. I'm just not I write really bad first drafts and they're so ugly. And like I just had the experience of so in the editorial process you have what's called first pass, sometimes second pass, where they have typeset, the publisher has typeset your book. It's basically clean and you're just going through and making little adjustments. So
Right.
I was doing that for I Medusa. And then I was jumping over to book five, which is in the roughest, and it was so mentally it was really jarring to go from something
Mhm.
polished and clean and nice to something that you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
And I was talking to another friend, another author, talking about how hard it is to start from that page one. You don't even know what the opening line's going to be. My
Mhm.
opening line's changed 22 times. So
Mhm.
I'm writing an opening line knowing it's not probably going to be the final opening line, but you just have to write it and let
Yeah.
yourself write it badly. That is really, really hard. And I'm a writer who it's really hard for me to get in the zone. And once I'm in the zone, I like my sweet spouse will come in to like give me a kiss on the forehead and I'm like, get out because it's even that 2 second
Yeah.
distraction rips me out of the world I'm in. And it is so
Mhm.
hard for me to get back into it.
Mhm.
I wish I was not like that. I have a friend who likes Formula One racing. Like
Oh.
I also love Formula One. She can write while she's watching a race.
Oh my goodness.
Like, I absolutely cannot do that. I need quiet, I need dark, I need no distractions. I have headphones on. So, yeah, the two things it's the focus and it's getting over the ugliness of first drafts.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I think we don't, new writers, you always assume everything has to be perfect. And then nobody would ever believe you if you sit there and say, no, 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 no. You will have written it and you've spent years on this. And then it's still going to go through multiple revisions at every
Yeah.
single stage. Your agent's going to look at it. They're going to ask for revisions. If it gets out and then it's there, their editor's going to look at it and copy it. And just all the different layers and levels of editing is just amazing. And revision, definitely for me, I published with a small press. So it's just myself and the editor. But even that book went through so many versions and revisions that I was just blown away. I mean, you're talking about it takes the year plus just to do revising. And so my daughter, I started my project with my daughter. And so it was just like, she loves to write now. And so but she's an artist. And then she sits there and she tells herself, she likes to tell me, she's like, well, I just want to like write it once and then it's going to be done. And I kind of laugh out loud and I look at her, I'm like, that's not going to happen, girl. I don't know what you're talking about, but that is not going to happen. She's like, if it's not perfect in my head, I can't sit there, write it. I said, just sit and write it and you're going to change it. You're always, always, always going to change it.
This is actually a cool, like, it's not planned, but a funny thing
Yeah.
about my writing too is that sometimes I'll have a plan and I'm in the middle of a scene and it doesn't go the way I want. And I'm like, we're just gonna roll with it. And sometimes I get a better product from just going with
Mhm.
it. So there's a
Definitely.
lesson in everything.
Yeah. Yeah, no, when we're writing, you definitely, but on this idea of we don't know what's always going to end up on the page, and then having to deal with the focus issue. I have two critique partners and we've been meeting. We met through like a meet cute event, and we all write middle grade because I write middle grade fantasy, and I've stuck with them and like they've become like my solid rock. And we meet once a month, like every month, and we're exchanging pages. Both one is now going to self-publish her YA book. Another just published she debuted this January. But if I didn't have my critique partners, like emailing me once a month saying, "Hey, are we going to meet this month?" Like I probably wouldn't sit down and write. And then I always tell them, "You guys light the fire under me." And like I'm working on the second book of the series, and you have the outline, but unless you sit down and actually start working on it, you don't ever like I never know what's going to come out. And I know where it's supposed to go, but the sit and the focus part is like you need to glue your butt to the chair and say, "Okay, just sit here and do this."
And I think people, with even well-intentioned people, this is something else I struggle with in writing and my author career, like both pieces, is like, people know that I have this job. People
Yeah.
know that I'm a writer, but people think I'm, oh, you're just at home, you're
Yeah.
available. And so getting my family, my friends
Mhm.
to understand and respect that, like, hey, the same way a doctor goes into the office and does what they're doing, the same way a lawyer goes into court,
Mhm.
like when I'm here in my office, I am working and
Working.
and I get paid based on when I turn my books in. So it's actually really
Yeah.
important that I turn stuff in on time. And we're 4 years in, so my spouse, my family, my immediate family and
Yeah.
friends understand it.
Yeah.
But starting off, my dad would be like, "Hey, want to go get lunch?" And I'm like, "I can't."
No.
And he would be kind of sad. And I'm like, I really am working, and he gets it now.
Yeah,
But that's an ongoing challenge.
it
Even
is.
people who love and respect you and know what you're doing, they don't always get it.
They don't always understand it.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so with since I Medusa is your upcoming novel, and so that's when we want to spend some time on. That's coming out in, is it October, November?
November 18th. Yeah.
November this
As
year.
of now. Publishing loves to
Definitely,
move
I
quickly.
know. If
Yeah.
nothing, right, knocking on wood that nothing changes, no delays in printing or anything like that.
Yes.
What is the one thing that you want your readers to take away from this story? And like how, and then how is that, is it a different message, I would imagine, from the Beast of Prey trilogy?
Yeah. So I'll pitch I Medusa for anyone who's
Yes.
not familiar with it too. It's I Medusa is this epic villain origin story that reimagines Medusa as a young Black woman caught between the whims of rivaling gods. So in the line with like Circe or Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, if that's your jam,
Yes.
it's in conversation with books like that. Um, you know, I loved mythology, and
Yeah.
specifically Greek mythology was the first mythology that I was exposed to. I went through an Egyptology phase as a kid because I'm learning that basically everybody had an Egyptology phase. I loved antiquity. Like I really thought antiquity was really neat. I wanted to be an archaeologist at one point.
Mm.
But I actually just had no idea that I thought really antiquity was just white people, to be
Yeah.
entirely honest with you, with maybe some brown adjacent people in
Mm.
Egypt. But I saw no black people, no Asian people, no one
Yeah.
else. It was
No
mostly
one else
white people.
existed.
And so one thing I'm hoping, well, maybe two things I'm hoping, is that we can talk more about antiquity in a multicultural way, because the truth
Mm.
is, I mean, Egypt is a part of the African continent. You
Right.
look at Greece, Greece is very close to the African continent. So the idea that these were homogenous societies is
Mhm.
just silly. And
It
I hope
is.
we can start just more conversations about the diversity in the ancient world, first of all. But um, I want more people to find connection with these myths and these stories. And my hope is that, reimagining Medusa as a Black woman, and notably, Medusa is not a real person. So reimagine her, she is literally a myth. Um,
Yes.
by reimagining her as a Black girl with locks, I'm hoping that more people who would maybe never have connected with Medusa or her story can find themselves in her story. And when we do that, we allow these figures to live on
Mm.
and get passed down to the next generation and the next generation. So that's the hope. I don't usually have a message in my books because
Yeah.
I don't write with like a message in mind, but I do hope more people are able to connect with Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Medusa's story.
Mhm.
They're seeing Medusa cast in a different way than maybe they've seen before.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. This idea that, I also was, as a kid, you love Greek mythology. And so, of course, when I start studying you start studying communications, we're always studying Aristotle and Plato and Socrates. So
Mhm.
you're everything is based in that foundation, where you assume that's where everything started. But people were all over the world.
Yeah.
Like the reality of it is, of course, you can't study all things at once, but if you look at one point in time, everybody existed at the same time. And depending on who's winning the war, of course, that's who you place on the hierarchy. But this idea that with mythology that we have to embrace the multiculturalism of it, that's an amazing, amazing message. Um, Coming from Thailand and in Southeast Asia, I don't find any of it. I don't find any folklore, and I had to do a lot of research, and then connecting with other Southeast Asian authors and realizing that all of our stories are the same. We're essentially the same people. We just happened to have moved and immigrated and migrated and settled in different parts of that region. So we always have that same folklore when I read Indonesian literature, fantasies, middle grades, Filipino folklore, Vietnamese, like all of it. It's so interdisciplinary and intercultural that more kids should be exposed, more readers and adults should be exposed to that aspect. So that's definitely an amazing takeaway. So I'm excited to read it because who would think of Medusa, picturing Medusa that way? So that's kind of fun. So it's like, oh, and now I'm excited. I can't wait for to read it. So I've read in some other articles that you really love the quote, imaginative freedom of the speculative fiction genre. Can you
Mhm.
kind of expand a little bit on why that's your favorite part?
Yeah. So genres are fluid. They always have been. I think there are some genres with a few more rules. Like for example, I think most romance writers would tell you a real romance has a happily ever after, or at least a happy for now ending.
Right.
That's becoming apparently gray because of romantasy.
Yeah.
But certain genres have pretty strict expectations. Historical fiction needs to be set in the past, and
Right.
it needs to be fairly accurate. Otherwise, people will come hunt you down.
Hmm.
But what's fun about the speculative genre, which this is horror, this is fantasy, science fiction, steampunk, all the subgenres, you just have a lot of freedom to, and I'll probably say this more than once, you have the freedom to ask why not?
Right.
You know, why can't we have wizards in a steampunk world a la like Howl's Moving Castle?
Right.
You know, why can't we have talking gods that are animals in the form of gods in the form of animals and
Mhm.
this war? I'm thinking of Princess Mononoke. I'm a massive Studio Ghibli fan,
Yes.
as you can tell, right? Why not? Why can't we have this? Why can't we have um a vampire in a castle? Like, you know, I like that it's always why not? Why let's take the bounds of reality and push. And I think we being speculative authors are able to sometimes communicate messages and tell stories and make points that maybe in the real world would be harder to make. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, I like that you can kind of do whatever you want in the speculative world. And it ranges. You have some that are light fantasy, light sci-fi where it feels very grounded, but you
Mhm.
also have total like second world fantasy that look nothing like our real world. And it draws people from all walks of life, old, young, people from different corners of the world together in this exercise in imagination. I just love that. I always have.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's this idea that sci-fi is doesn't always have to take place in outer space, or if you can reimagine even what outer space or space would feel like, how everything does still feel kind of grounded. It
Mhm.
made, as you're talking through it, it makes me, I finished Iron Widow in the middle of Heavenly Tyrant. So that, I didn't realize as I was reading it that it's classified as sci-fi. And I
Mhm.
didn't get it until I finished it.
Good.
And so
Yeah.
it's like, that's just that. I don't want to spoil it. But it's like that, this idea of being able to reimagine all of these worlds and having that sense, it really is a liberating feeling, right? That's part of the reason I love writing for middle grade, because for kids, anything goes. And so
Oh yeah, well, and one of my very favorite, like almost introductory fantasy books is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Why
Exactly.
can't there be a whole other kingdom in the back of your closet
Why
or the
not?
back of your wardrobe? Why not? Why can't there be a white witch who's cast a curse over this land
Yeah.
and time moves differently in
Mhm.
that world? Why not? C.S. Lewis just kept asking, why
Why
not? And I
not?
love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And so kids have this openness to it,
Hmm.
whereas we lose it as we get older, unless you kind of still secretly stay grounded. And I think like I always tell people I'm new to anime and I'm new to reading mangas. And I'm only a few years in, so I'm definitely behind. But having, the reason I love watching anime is it gives you that. I'm a total Ghibli fan as well. So
Yeah.
Howl's Moving Castle is my
Yep.
all-time favorite. I watched it. I watch it every year, some years, and or if not, multiple times a year. I love watching it in the dub. I love watching the subtitles, like reading the subtitles, hearing the language, is always kind of fun. But being able to connect to those stories and just imagining and saying, why not, is a perfect reason to want to write in that world. Right?
Yes.
What do you think would be the most challenging part of this genre, or is there a challenging part to it?
I think there have been people who have they've criticized the fact that it's so open.
Mhm.
I think it loses sometimes credibility.
Mhm.
And that's changing. But for example, you would be 10 to 20 years ago, you would have been hard pressed as a fantasy author to pursue an MFA because that
Right.
wasn't considered serious
Yeah.
writing. And even now, like I'll tell people I'm an author and what do you write? And I'll say I write, fantasy. Sometimes I'll say I write for children.
Mhm.
And there's sometimes, I think, less respect given
Mhm.
to speculative work, even though some of the biggest books in the world come from the speculative genre of
Exactly.
like Game of Thrones and Harry Potter and Twilight and such. Like, these are speculative books.
Right.
So I think that sometimes there's just generally less respect given to the genre or genres that are within speculative.
Mhm.
Um, Again, this is not so much of a problem now, but obviously, historically, speculative fiction has been gatekept. Only
Yeah.
certain kinds of speculative fiction, like we've had mythology retellings
Yeah.
for a long time, but it's been
Not
mythology coming out of very specific parts of the world, very
right.
specific types of myths.
Right.
With historical fiction, we've only had or historical fantasy, I should say, only certain types of history, fantasy set in
Mhm.
certain types of lore. Um,
Mhm.
is what, and what authors have heard in the past is, well, I don't know how to sell this. I don't think there's an audience
Yeah.
for this kind of fantasy. This is too weird.
Right.
Um, or, it's been historically male dominated, and
Yeah.
that's changing, but there are definitely still biases. There are definitely still prejudices. We have some really amazing people pushing against it, but
Mhm.
um, what I don't want people to say is, well, there's that one author, so the problem is fixed. And it's like,
Right.
no, one person being an exception does not mean the system itself is fixed or
Like,
that things are better for everyone. It just means that one person got lucky and kind of got through.
right.
Um, but we still there are still prejudice. I know a lot of adult fantasy authors who are assumed to be YA because the idea
Mhm.
of a female being an adult fantasy author,
Mhm.
people don't believe it. People think, oh, they
Right.
must write romantasy because all women write romance
Yeah.
fantasy. Not true. Oh, you're a BIPOC, a
Mhm.
Black Indigenous person of color. You must write fantasy that has social issues involved.
Right.
Not necessarily. Um, so just continuing to push against some of those stereotypes and expectations. That has been a challenge. Sometimes it's still a challenge, but it's
Yeah.
changing. So I'm hopeful.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. We have to keep breaking through and definitely fighting. And so I think when I sit and I go, oh, did I want to write a story that was Thai inspired? And it, like you're saying, it's a why not, right? Why do I need to wait for somebody else to write it? But I agree that 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you definitely would not see books that feature characters like yours, that feature a character like mine. And so we definitely want to keep pushing for that representation, because it is so important. But this idea that no, these stories aren't going to sell, that's not true. There are readers out there yearning for all sorts of stories, and so we have to keep kind of fighting. And so that's one of the cool things about the indie press and small presses of trying to create that balance, try to lower the, open the field a little bit more,
Yeah.
so that it's not just in the hands of those main gatekeepers. And
Yeah.
changing who the gatekeepers are is definitely important too. So then, next question that I have for you is, what do you think is something that you wish you knew about before becoming an author?
Okay. Ooh, a lot. A lot. I talked about one of them, which is just bifurcating author
Yeah.
versus writer, understanding you cannot do it all at once.
Mhm.
Um, Oh gosh, like you really don't control as much as you think you do. I mean, I have and had friends that are all really ambitious people. And it's
Mhm.
like if I can just gather all the data and if I have all the info and if I
Yeah.
control everything, I can control the fate of my book. But publishing is not always a meritocracy. Maybe
Mhm.
that's one of the things I wish that I could tell people and wish I could tell myself is there are some wonderful books that get their due. There are
Yeah.
also a lot of great books that don't get their due. And
Mhm.
that is not a reflection of your talent. That is not a reflection of whether or not you were deserving. It's because, and this is something like an exercise I do a lot, I remind myself that publishing is one of the entertainment industries, just like film, just like television, just like music. It's an
Mhm.
entertainment industry. There are billions of dollars behind it. And that money influences sometimes more than you would guess. So um, all you can do is write the best book that you can, and the right readers will find it. But you have to learn how to measure success in ways more than just did I hit this list? Did I get this prize? Did I do this thing? Um, finding sometimes non-tangible ways to measure your success is really, really important, I think.
Definitely. Yes, understanding the subjectiveness to the industry is so
Mhm.
important walking in, and it's not equating that with your worth or the value of your work is so important, I think, for all writers and all creatives across fields. But I think I must agree with you, understanding that it is entertainment and that's our objective, because be surprised and whether you can talk about it, it's being adapted, correct?
It's in the adaptation process. What I always tell people is that process is super
So
slow,
slow. Yes, super slow. Are you involved in the process?
just a little bit. I'm an executive producer on it, which I think sounds fancier than it
Yes,
really
yes,
is.
yes.
Did have a really great like conversation. The woman who wrote the script, her name's Melody Cooper. She's a lovely woman. She read Beasts of Prey and really got it. And I
Hmm.
think just having talked to friends who've had their stuff adapted, there's a letting go process that
Yeah,
happens when you move your work from one medium to
medium.
another. So in a way, I still care about Beasts of Prey, but I've let it
Yeah,
go. I trust
yeah,
Melody with it, and you know, I care, but I'm also focused on the thing that I do. I write the
right.
books. You know, so I think about it. It's really cool to be able to say it. I understand that it's slow. I remind people that Game of Thrones was published, like the first Game of Thrones book was published, I believe, in like 1996, and we didn't
Yeah,
see a TV adaptation until 2011.
right.
You hope it doesn't take that long, but I would rather it take a long time and be done well than for it to
Mhm.
be rushed and it
Rush.
turn out not to be very good because I've also seen authors who've had their work adapted not really as well.
Mhm.
It's heartbreaking.
Mhm. Mhm. Because
Readers
then
don't
that
and
becomes the
it
impression
was
of your book.
yeah, it becomes the impression of your book. Readers are holding you responsible because they
Mhm.
think you were the one that
You wrote it.
of their favorite character out. And it can be a really, really devastating process as a creative to have your work
Yeah.
misinterpreted. So
Mhm.
it's there, it's happening, it's very, very slow. I'm just it's kind of in the back of my mind. I have
Yeah. Yeah.
more books to
Yeah.
read than I'm on.
Definitely. It's like, let's focus on the next big story that's out there and get those out there and coming up with that original content, rather than waiting on the adaptations. But I definitely love adaptations, and seeing how different mediums can bring different stories to life. So that's
Yeah.
definitely fun. And knowing and understanding if publishing is this long, then I can imagine what
Film
the
is
others
longer,
are.
film is even longer, and it's full of stop goes. It's, oh,
Yeah.
we're doing this. Oh, wait, no, we're not. The economy absolutely
Yeah.
impacts. Like, is there money? Did these
Is
people
there
have money to make this
Did you
happen?
find the right people to
Is
do
this
this?
actor available?
Okay.
It's back to what you can control, right? Focus
Mhm.
on what you can control. You can't control if your book's going to hit the bestseller list. You can't
No.
control if your publisher's going to pay for a tour. What you can control is, did I write the best book that I could
Right.
write? Did I use whatever social media I'm comfortable with to talk about it? And if you know you did everything you could within your control, you can find peace in that.
Right. Right. Being able to find peace in it is the most important part. Right Hive's tagline is writing the future that we need. What does that look like to you?
So I said I was going to refrain back to this. It's continuing to ask why not. And I say we, I need to remember, I'm trying to be less Americentric because but I am an American woman, right?
Yeah.
My country, we Americans,
Yeah.
are in a really, really difficult time. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of division. There's a
Mhm.
lot of, it feels very bleak.
Yes.
And we have new generations coming up all the time who are coming up in this bleakness. I can relate because I was a teenager during the 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah.
And I remember like things like 9/11 and the Afghanistan war. So nothing new, but I think writing stories that allow those new generations and even older generations to remember what hope looks like and what hope
Mhm.
feels like, remembering what is right and what is wrong, even when everybody else is normalizing things that are not right, standing in defiance of it. I've seen more discussions about how can we keep politics out of books? No, we
Mhm.
can't,
So,
because books are art and art is inherently political.
yes.
So it's continuing to stand firm on that, um, and defiantly creating through art a picture of the future that that reflects what we know is right. That's what it looks like for me. And it's not giving up. You may write a story that people get really angry at and how dare you, and it's um it's continuing to write even when people push back on what you have to say.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. Everything is political. And then to ignore it or to believe that it's not, you're fooling yourself. So we definitely as artists have to embrace that and know that anytime you say anything, the way you craft your characters and the storylines you pull through, you're being political and you're advocates of a cause, whether you're active or not. That is definitely important to get that story out there, get that word out there, and know that we need to be better. Or yes, so well, again, as Americans, right? It's off. We're in a weird, crazy time.
And not, I mean,
Right.
not just, I say America because I feel comfortable talking about my own home, but
Yeah.
there are issues, there are very serious issues all over the world,
Mhm.
all the time, in different continents, in different parts of the world. So wherever you are, because I know Right Hive has an international presence and a huge community,
Yeah.
wherever you are, where you see injustice and you feel like, what can I do? I'm just one person. You can
Mhm.
pick up your pen, you can
Yeah.
open up your laptop, you can make a difference, um,
Mhm.
through the way that feels most natural to you, through your art, through what you have to say.
So for the last question that we have here, if you could choose one superpower to have, what would it be?
I would love to be able to see the future. I don't even need to see like I don't need to see a lot, but just glimpses, just little glimpses. That would be nice. I'm at an age where I'm like, should I do this? Should I do
Yeah.
that? Like, I'm in my early 30s, so I'm not a kid, I'm not a teenager, I'm not in my 20s. I'm also not super old.
Yeah.
But I think about the future a lot. Um, and so I'd love to be able to see the future, just a little.
That's a good one. Yes, definitely being able to see the future, hopefully wanting to be able to find a way to change it if necessary, if
Yeah.
it's not a future that you're all in, because that can be like the downside of seeing the future. It's like, oh, I don't want this future right now.
Oh yeah, it would be hard if you couldn't see. And I guess that's why we can't because it starts to become like a butterfly effect of, oh, you can't
Right.
do this. So yeah, I guess I just, a lot of the time I'm like, is it going to be all right?
Yeah.
Before I'm a deeply anxious person. And so I'm
Yeah.
always like, if I make this one choice, if I buy this thing, is
Mhm.
it the right thing to buy? I want to buy a house. Is that the right house to buy? Like, that's the stuff that makes me super anxious. So,
I
you
know.
know, yeah, just little things.
Well, it has been wonderful chatting with you. And so I really enjoyed having this conversation. I hope that the audience and the end viewers, that all our conference goers are going to find the bits of wisdom that you've shared and be able to kind of grow with it. Where can we find you? Where can we get your books? Tell us, give me your plug before we end.
Okay. Yeah. So my website is always up, www.ayanagray.com, Ayanagray. I am most active on Instagram. I check DMs. That's where I'm usually at. I have a TikTok. I have a weird relationship with TikTok, but technically I have a TikTok. I have Blue Sky, but it is overwhelming to be on all those places.
It is.
So Instagram is where I'm mostly at Ayana Gray with an underscore at the end. As far as my books, you can get them from your favorite place to get books, is what I always say. I never try to push towards one thing. I do love my independent bookstore here in Little Rock, Arkansas, Wordsworth Books. I personalize and sign anything they give to me. And they ship. So if you ever want like signed or personalized books, that's where to go. Um, and also, I always want to say this too, like, I get that not everybody's in a position to buy new books, buy hardcovers. Books are expensive. So
You're
just
very.
know if you're in that boat, if you have hit your book budget for the year, um, if the Barnes& and Noble pre-order book sale got you and you're like, I have no more money for books, your local library is always a really great way to support not just me, but other authors just by requesting. Because when librarians see a book getting requested a lot, they will order more for their library. And that's helpful too. So support your local libraries and indies as well.
Um, Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ayana, for your time. It has been a lovely, lovely chat, technical difficulties aside.
I
But
had so much
um,
fun having me.
we have enjoyed it. So thank you guys so much. Please write down your comments in the chat board. Be sure to check out all of the other wonderful events that we've got going on. And for now, this is Patry signing out. Bye.
Bye.